Hi, welcome to this video. So in the next couple of moments we'll go through the organelles that can be found in a typical animal cell or eukaryotic cell and their basic functions. So our body's made up of millions of cells, and this is kind of what some of them look like under the microscope. So as you can see, they come in various shapes and forms. Here you've got our skin cells, our brain cells, neurons, our hair cells, our blood cells. So as you can see, they don't look alike on the outside, but on the inside they have very similar organelles that serve similar functions as well. So here we have a diagram of what's inside a typical eukaryotic cell. What we're going to do now is just go through each of these organelles and talk about them and their functions. So we'll start off with the plasma membrane, also known as the cell membrane, and it just runs all along the outside of the cell. It's semi-permeable, which means it only allows certain substances to go in and out of the cell. So up here we have these little protrusions outside of the cell membrane. These are called microvilli, and what they do is they increase the surface area of the cell and therefore help with secretion and absorption of substances. What's not shown in this diagram are cilia and flagella. Now these are just longer extensions that help the cell in movement, so it kind of propels the cell along its path. So within the cell membrane there's this gel-like substance, and it's called cytoplasm, and it kind of just suspends all the organelles within the cell. Now the most obvious structure inside any cell usually is going to be the nucleus. So that's the round, large structure towards the center of the cell. What it contains is DNA, which is our genetic information, and that's just really important for controlling the cell and its functions. Inside the nucleus you can see a smaller round organelle. This is the nucleolus. It contains RNA or ribonucleic acid. Now close by to the nucleus we have these string-like organelles, and these are called rough endoplasmic reticulum. The reason why it's called rough endoplasmic reticulum, and this diagram actually doesn't depict this well, is that it has small, tiny, round structures called ribosomes attached to it, and its function is to basically just synthesize or produce proteins. These structures, on the other hand, are called smooth endoplasmic reticulum. They don't contain any ribosomes on them, hence the reason why they're called smooth endoplasmic reticulum. What these structures do is that they help in the synthesis and transport of lipids and steroids. Moving on now to the Golgi apparatus. So before we were talking about how our proteins are produced in the rough endoplasmic reticulum. Well, when they're produced, what happens is that they travel all the way to the Golgi apparatus. And the Golgi apparatus is kind of like a post office. So what it does is it packages these proteins into storage like vesicles, and it sends it away to where these proteins are needed. So it could be outside of the cell, it could be inside of the cell. So it's kind of like a packaging area. Another function of the Golgi apparatus is that it produces lysosomes. So now we'll move on to these structures here. These are lysosomes, and what's special about them is that they're sacs that contain digestive enzymes. Digestive enzymes are useful in the cell for a number of reasons. So if there's waste products inside the cell, these lysosomes come up and kind of engulf all these waste materials and digest them and therefore eliminate them. They also help with engulfing and getting rid of bacteria and viruses as well. So that's our lysosomes. Now moving on to these oval shape like structures called mitochondria, and mitochondria are very distinct from the other organelles because they have a double membrane, as we can see. And what mitochondria does is it helps with energy production. So when we eat food, our body can't naturally transform that into energy. It needs to go through complex processes with the assistance of mitochondria. So mitochondria converts the sugar that we eat, usually in the form of glucose, into ATP energy so that our body can function for things like digestion or moving around. These structures up here are called centrioles. They come in pairs. They're made up of microtubules, which as the name suggests are just tubes, and they help to build flagella and cilia, which I talked about before was the extensions out of the cell membrane that helps with cell motion. These centrioles also play an important role in cell division as well. Now what's not labelled in this diagram but is relatively important is the cell cytoskeleton. Now the cytoskeleton is just a network of fibres and tubules running throughout the cell. It provides support for the cell, and it also assists in transport of materials all around the cell and also cell division. So that's a brief overview of all these organelles that you find in a typical cell and their functions. So now it's your turn. So here's a diagram depicting what's inside a typical eukaryotic cell. I want you to go back if necessary to look over some of the things we've just discussed, because I know that this might be new information and there's heaps of words thrown at you. So pause the video, have a go, get as much filled in as you can, and we'll go through it in the next slide. Okay, so here are all the answers. Hopefully you got most of them correct. Let's go through them now. So here's the cell membrane surrounding the cell. Inside you've got the fluid-like structure called cytoplasm, which suspends all our organelles. Right inside the center of the cell, smack bang in the middle, we've got the large nucleus. Inside it, a smaller round structure called the nucleolus. Nearby the nucleus here, we have these string-like structures. As we can see, this one here is pretty smooth. So this is called smooth ER. Okay, it doesn't have those round structures attached to it like this one. So this is called rough ER. And of course the round structures are ribosomes, which effectively produces proteins. Now once the proteins are produced, they're sent to the Golgi apparatus, which is here for packaging. They're packaged into vesicles, which are these structures here. Here we have our lysosome, a sac full of digestive enzymes. Mitochondria, so distinguished by their oval shape and double membrane. Here we've got our centrioles, so they come in pairs. These are ribosomes, and I should have made mention before that ribosomes are not only formed on rough endoplasmic reticulum, they can also be dispersed throughout the cell. The structure up here, pinocytotic vesicles, you just have to know that as vesicles, which means they're just sacs that store material. And microtubules, so we did briefly mention about this. This is part of the cytoskeleton that provides the cell with support and also assists in transport around the cell as well. And that's it. That's pretty much all the organelles inside the cell and a brief overview of their functions. Now I know that there are lots of words thrown at you and that there's a lot of content in this particular area of biology. In order to memorize all these, I would suggest to go through the video maybe a second time or a third time, stop and pause where you need to, maybe relabeling some of the diagrams and just see how you go. So that's it. Thanks for watching.